Great. Hello, everyone. Let me know if the audio is coming through okay and if you were able to hear the music as an intro. You can take this time, if you haven't already, to check your audio equipment, and you can do so by clicking on the bottom, actually the down arrow at the top right-hand corner of your screen right next to your microphone, and you can check your mic and your webcam if you do have a webcam, as well as your speakers. If you could, let me know if you have a microphone today by typing a 1 in the chat box, and if you have a webcam, if you could type in a 2 in the chat box, just to get an idea as to what everyone has. So if you have a microphone up and running, please type in a 1 in the chat box, and if you have a webcam, please enter a 2 in the chat box. Okay, this is our second session, TESOL Talk, and this session is for anyone who's interested in teaching English to students of other languages. The attendees are encouraged to bring your own experience, perspective on what is going on in your own classroom. And really the idea here is to create kind of a round table, if you will, an informal discussion about what's going on in your experiences with teaching English as a foreign language or a second language. These classes typically are not for English language speakers in the sense of this is not an English class, but more of a discussion for those who are interested in helping other English language learners. Having said that, you can be a pre-service or an in-service English teacher. So it's quite open, and certainly anyone who feels they would like just to lurk in the background, that's certainly okay too, since all of these sessions are open and open to the public. So the basic agenda for all the TESOL Talks are some brief introductions to introduce ourselves, to get to know each other a little bit before we get started, and then we'll go on to certain topics that you would like to discuss first, and see where the discussion takes us. The link that I've provided here at the bottom of this slide, you should be able to access this by clicking over the link. If not, you can click and drag or copy and paste this link. But this is where you can find prior sessions. In this case, you can find the recording for TESOL Talk 1, which occurred about 2 weeks ago, if memory serves. So you can check that out if you wish. This session is also being recorded and will also be uploaded to YouTube, and you can certainly check out the recording as well in WizIQ. So if for any reason you do need to leave early, feel free to do so, and know that all the sessions will be recorded and you'll have access to those at a later date or a later time. So if we want to go ahead and get started, I am curious to know where some of you are from. Since we don't have a lot of you, I think we can make this work. I'm going to give everyone writing controls, and if you are familiar with WizIQ, once you have the writing controls, you can come over here at the top of the left-hand corner of your screen and select either smiley face or just draw a color from one of the pointers. But if you could, maybe create a smiley face and put it over the map as to indicate where you're from, where you're located today, just to get an idea where you're from. So all of you, except for Priscilla, it's still working, should have writing controls, which should give you access to the toolbar at the left-hand side of your screen. And if you are familiar with WizIQ and would like to put a smiley face, you can click on any of the smiley faces and draw, as I'm doing here. I'm currently in Aguascalientes, Mexico, so I'm going to try to put that more or less where I'm located. If not, if you're not familiar or comfortable with using the toolbar, feel free to include that information in the chat box. I think, Esther, you are from Tecate, is that correct? From Mexico? Welcome. You can resize the smiley face if you want by clicking the selection tool at the very top, and you can resize your smiley face if you wish to make it a little bit smaller. So I think Esther and I are pretty much right next to each other. Yep. So we're practically neighbors. I know Priscilla's from the States. Noor, where are you from? I don't know if maybe I missed it. If you'd like to let us know where you're from, and if you're a teacher, what do you teach? And or if you're studying, what are you studying? I know Priscilla's pursuing a doctorate degree. Okay, so we have... All right, so feel free to move around your smiley face over the country or over the location. Or if you'd like to just put it in the chat box, that's fine also. So I'll go ahead and pass the microphone around. So I see that Priscilla and Esther, it appears, are the only two that have microphones. If anyone wants the mic at any time during the session, feel free to either raise your hand or just mention something in the chat box to get my attention. I'll be more than happy to pass the mic. But I'll go ahead and activate Priscilla's microphone. Priscilla, if you'd like to introduce yourself and share anything about what you are currently studying that you feel that you wish to share. So I'll go ahead and activate your mic.
Okay. Hey, Ben. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Priscilla, and I am a doctoral candidate for educational technology, and I'm exploring conversational English online. That is my focus. That's my interest. I'm just trying to come up with how I'm going to get the information to research my theories. I appreciate the opportunity to share and learn and listen. Thanks, Ben. I'll mute.
Great, Priscilla. Thank you very much. It's great to have you here. Esther, I'll go ahead and activate your microphone. And typically what we do is I'll go ahead and leave all the microphones activated, but I do ask that you keep it muted until you would like to speak. That way we can try to avoid echo. So Esther, I'll go ahead and activate your mic, and I'll mute mine. Okay, Esther, go right ahead. It looks like your microphone is activated. There we go.
Sorry about that, sir. I have my mic muted. I'm an English teacher for young children in a public school, and have been teaching preschoolers and elementary school students since 2003. I think that's all the... And I'm from Tecate, Mexico. It's a border to USA. I'm going to mute my mic.
Great, Esther. It's great to have you here, and hopefully we can find out more about your teaching context today during our sessions. Again, these sessions are open and very, very participative, and so feel free to come in and join in the discussion, and don't be afraid of talking too much, because really the idea is to hear from you and to start sharing ideas about what's going on in our classrooms, about how we can improve, and share ideas, thoughts, and experiences with how to create better learning environments for our English language learners. Okay, Noor, do you have a microphone today? I'm not sure if you indicated one way or the other, but if you do, if you like the microphone, please let me know, and I'll be more than happy to give you the microphone. Okay, looks like Ravi just joined us. Ravi, we're just getting started and introducing ourselves. Would you like to introduce yourself? If so, please let me know if you have a microphone. If you do, you can type a 1 in the chat box. And if you have a webcam, please enter a 2 in the chat box. And again, I'll be more than happy to give you the microphone once I know that you have a mic and you would like to speak. Okay, sorry, my computer is acting a little bit strange today. Okay, the last week, or 2 weeks ago actually, our last session on TESOL Talk, we talked a little bit about research. I know Priscilla is doing some research, and we talked a little bit about selecting participants for a study. And Priscilla, I don't know if you have made any decisions regarding your participants, if you've if anything has transpired over the last couple of weeks that you'd like to share about choosing the participants for your study. I think you'd mentioned that you were looking or considering possibly a group there locally in the States, that some language learners, not necessarily English language learners, but other languages that you would have access to. So I don't know if you would like to share or if you have made any decisions on that front.
Thank you, Ben. No, at this moment, I don't have anything to report about that. The idea is still in my head. I had to finish up some other papers, but again, starting on something tomorrow. I wanted to do it today. I'm going to write some letters to the local universities to see what type of venue they may have that might be of benefit to me, to see if I could enter in that way. The appointment that I had at one local university had to be postponed, so I'm not sure when we will meet, but it will not be next week. And so I'm still just toying with some ideas, thinking about what I want to do, how to do it, how to approach it. But I'm going to work on sending the letters and seeing if they can give me some directions, if they can't perhaps find enough students in their university or at their university, just what their thoughts may be as to anything they might want to suggest in doing something.
Sorry about that. I activated my mic a little bit too early. There's something that just occurred to me, and I'm not sure what kind of timetable you're under. I don't know when you're going to be actually you're going to be collecting your data. But at our university, I work at a university in Aguascalientes, Mexico, and we often participate in what we refer to our language exchanges. And so we have various groups at our university that get online once a week for an hour and talk with a group in from Marquette University in Minnesota. And it's an ongoing thing. It typically lasts the entire semester. And they speak half English and half Spanish. So our English language learners are speaking with Spanish language learners in the U.S. And we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now, and it's really a wonderful an experience for the students. So I'll just throw that out there, Priscilla, and if you want a little bit more information, and if you think, for example, next semester, starting in August, I think we'll start up again. If that is within your time frame and you want to know a little bit more about it to see if that might help you, feel free to contact me. I'd be more than happy to try to help you in that. So if I'll throw that out there, think about it and let me know. You can get back to me or send me an email, and I'll certainly give you all the information that I have. And so I'll just wanted to throw that out. We also talked, I don't know if you have anything else, Priscilla, that you'd like to talk about as far as your research is going that you'd like to share. Again, just feel free to either jump in or just let me know in the chat box. Esther, I don't know, or if anyone else is doing any research or any action research. It doesn't really necessarily have to be formal research, but it can be something that's going on in your classroom if you are formally collecting data as your own teaching practices as a way to improve, or typically groups of teachers sometimes work together in action research projects. So if anyone is participating in that, would like to share, again, feel free to let me know. Feel free to jump in, and we can be great to hear from you. All right, so we also talked a little bit last week about one of the questions we ask, and we typically we throw out some different questions to ponder. And one of the questions we talked about a couple of weeks ago in the last session on TESOL Talk was, how do we integrate the 4 skills? How do we create an environment for English language learners that give them the opportunity to practice the 4 skills? And we talked a little bit about performance tasks. And I don't know if anyone has had experiences with performance tasks or would like to share an experience or some sort of activity that they've done in the past where the students have had to use the 4 skills, and perhaps you might talk about how you evaluated the 4 skills, or it might even be just a good activity that you felt went really well with your students where they had to use all of their 4 skills. So I'll throw that out there if anyone wants to mention or share some ideas about performance tasks, how they created it, how they planned for it, how they implemented it, and ultimately how they evaluated the students in the 4 language skills. So anyone would like to take that on? I mentioned briefly the language exchanges, and we typically use those as kind of a weekly activity where students are able to use the 4 skills. They're online and they're in front of a computer, so typically they have to read different information that they get off the internet. If they are using a conversational guide, they're obviously reading and writing, taking notes as well during the language exchange. So they're incorporating the 4 skills in that experience, and there are different ways that we've evaluated the students through reflections, typically through different activities throughout the week that are linked to the actual language exchange. And we've actually had some sessions on WizIQ that discussed in more detail these language exchanges. So I can give you that information later if you'd like to contact me. I can try to track those down for you. It's been a couple of years now, but I think I can find those for you. But they're all located on WizIQ since all of our sessions were conducted online through this virtual classroom. So anyone would like to discuss the performance tasks? Okay, all right, so we'll move on then, and we'll talk about something else. And again, if you'd like to bring something up that we've talked about, feel free to let me know. Yeah, go ahead.
Ben, I just wanted to say, I know that Esther had mentioned in a session about project-based learning, and I think that the performance tasks and tests that you're speaking of, they seem to be the same thing, just by a different name. Would that be correct or no? Project-based learning is that, for me, it would be an activity that the students would get in, and they come up with some parameters or with a rubric, and they end up with a product to demonstrate their comprehension, their understanding, and their ability to perform the task. Is that the same thing as performance that you're speaking of? Or could you just explain exactly what those 4 skills are for your performance test, and maybe give me an example of what they are? I'll mute.
Sure, Priscilla, and that's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and activate my video just to show you this book, and then I'll close down the video because I know it eats up a lot of the broadband. But this is a book from Wiggins and McTighe that came out in 2005 called Understanding by Design. I highly recommend it. Maybe you can see that there. Okay. And I also have, this is a little bit older, but this is from Grant Wiggins called Educative Assessment. And they're both related or speak a lot about this notion of performance tasks. And they differentiate performance tasks from project-based learning or task-based learning to explain a little bit, like the task-based learning is typically more rigid in the sense that there are certain tasks that everyone must follow, and it's a little bit more structured in the way in which students are going to create something at the end, a product, as Priscilla mentioned. The performance tasks, certainly there are some elements of project-based learning or task-based learning in the actual performance task, but they talk about the ultimate goal of performance tasks is to achieve a understanding, and they define understanding by having 6 facets of understanding. So students can explain, they have a perspective, they can apply, they have empathy, they have self-knowledge, and I'm missing one. They have perspective, and they can interpret. I missed that one. So there are 6 different facets, and the idea with the performance task is that you want the learners to be able to express those 6 facets of an understanding through the actual task itself. Now, the task typically is not drawn out over weeks. It might only be, depending on the session, it may be just a couple of days, the actual performance itself. It may just be one day. It just depends. There's no reference to the actual length of the performance task. It doesn't necessarily have to be a long experience for the students. But the idea is that you design these performance tasks before you start planning your instruction, before you do your lesson plan. You know that in a couple, like 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to have a performance task, and the students, more importantly, know that in 2 or 3 weeks they're going to have to do this performance task. So those 2 or 3 weeks prior to the performance task lead up to help the students prepare to do the performance task. It's not necessarily, in fact, it's not a step-by-step process for them to practice doing well in the performance test as you would with task-based learning. But you're doing a variety of different activities and assessments, in this case over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, in preparation for the performance task. So I don't know if hopefully I explained myself, but the main thing is that it's not looking at a project-based learning where you're looking at, okay, week 1 everyone's going to do this task, the next week everybody's going to do this task, and the next week everyone's going to do this task over a longer course of a time period. But it's more looking at what different ways and different activities, different ways of assessing the students is needed to give them the confidence, the practice, the skills, the knowledge to be able to perform at the end of, in this case, a unit. If you want to look at a unit going over the course of maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So, Priscilla, I don't know if that is any clearer for you, or
it could possibly be. I just would wonder, as an example, would it be the students starting out, I don't know, in CTE, career and technical education, is it creating, they start out maybe making a pillow, but through the process of making a pillow or a rocket, they're doing lots of tasks where they have to form themselves into teams, make decisions, lead, sometimes become the follower. Are those the types of things that we're looking at, that you're talking about? I don't know that I'm really clear.
Okay, yeah. Let me give you an example. One of the performance tests that we like to do at the university that I've seen quite a bit has to relate to like tourism, and so we take this notion of travel or tourism, which comes in a lot of course books, but we build an understanding, and we build an understanding for this performance task in the following way. The understanding might be that the learners will understand that designing a successful vacation trip depends a lot on the family, depends on the social economical background of the family, and so for the students to really gain that understanding, again through a foreign language in this case, there's a lot of things that have to happen, and the performance task at the end because we start with the end. The Wiggins and McTighe refer to this as backward design, because we're actually starting with the assessment. We're not starting with the teaching or the lesson planning, but we're actually starting with, in this case, the performance test, or the way in which we're going to assess the students. So the performance test might be that the students will need to create different brochures, maybe a video, but they need to create a vacation plan for a family. That's the performance task. To create a vacation package or a plan for a particular family. And it can be a little bit more specific, but in a nutshell, that is the performance test. Now you may be thinking, well, there's a million different ways that you can do that. And that's right, and that's true, and that's exactly why performance tests in this case differ from a project-based learning, because in a project-based learning or problem-based learning, you may already set out those different steps that would lead to a particular product. In a performance test, there's more flexibility. There's more decision-making on the part of the learner, with the teacher facilitating as needed, depending on the maturity level of the students. Obviously, if we're looking at small children, in the case of Esther, she's going to have to facilitate or mediate a little bit more than maybe college students. The level of language also will dictate how much the teacher will need to be involved. But the idea is that the students to have some level of flexibility. They can decide if they want to create a brochure. They can decide if they want to create a video, or some sort of collage or picture or poster board. We can use technology, but you don't necessarily have to use technology if you want to have the students perform. But the idea is that you tell the students, in this case, 2 or 3 weeks before they're to actually do the performance task, you're going to say, okay, you're going to create this plan, this vacation plan for this family, and you're going to have to prepare. Now, how do we prepare over those 2 weeks? Well, they're going to have to learn different vocabulary, obviously. They're going to have to learn vocabulary related to the field of tourism. They may have to learn formal versus informal language, how to address a family or a stranger if they're just coming in, if they're coming into the travel agency. There are roles that are being assumed, so the language learners are going to have to know how to address someone perhaps in a formal way. You can also talk about nonverbal communication, shaking hands, or are they going to hug their clients? How much space are they going to leave between them? Things of that nature. So all of these things, again, talking about verbs and the normal things that language teachers that have to deal with, obviously are going to have to be covered, in this case, related to tourism. So this might include a few days working in the book, working on exercises to review vocabulary and verb conjugations and articles or whatever, any type of grammar that's related for that particular lesson or that particular unit. Excuse me. And so you might also have pair work. You might have even some debates. And again, all of these activities aren't necessarily part of the performance test, but it's practice that they need in order for them to do well in the performance task. So the actual tasks themselves are not. You're not going to practice the performance test for 2 weeks, for example, or you're not going to work on brochures for 3 weeks. You're going to be doing some of the normal things, I would say normal things that we typically think about in maybe a traditional language class, as again mentioning either a workbook, working in groups, working in teams, talking to each other so they can practice their speaking skills. But eventually they're going to be working towards this performance test where they may have to perform either in front of a real audience, preferably, or at least a simulated audience that would serve just as well as an authentic audience. But the idea is that the performance test allows the students to use the language, in this case, English as a foreign language or second language, for a real purpose. That there's a real reason why they're having to do this performance task, and that's one of the criteria for conducting a good performance task, is that there's a good reason to do it. And so it's been our experience that we've been working with performance tests quite a bit at our university, that it's the more authentic that you can create the experience, the better, and the more choices that you can allow the students to make on their own, the better as well. They become invested in the experience because they know that they have a certain voice. And a lot of the students will go above and beyond what they typically maybe have done in the past, as far as getting realia, getting real materials, and making real brochures to make everything as authentic as possible. So when they do the performance task, it's a better experience for them. So, Priscilla, please let me know if that's any clearer, or if you have any other questions, or if anyone else has questions about performance task or the example that I provided.
Well, that was a great example, and I think I could vividly see what you were saying. Just one thought, though. Do they put themselves in groups to work, or is it the entire class will work together to put this activity or this performance together? Do you group them, or how does that happen? And that's the only question I have.
Yeah, and it's a very good question, and most of the time there's some sort of grouping involved. But again, it's going to depend on how many students you have in your class and really what the actual performance is. But my experience has been most of them, there are some groups that form. Now, how do they form? Well, they typically anywhere from pairs up to maybe small groups of 4 or 5. The students, it will vary. Sometimes the students choose who they're going to work with. Sometimes the teacher chooses. And again, that's going to depend on depends on, there's a lot of variables, as you know. It could be if there's a lot of mixed level students in one class, the teacher might decide to group up or form heterogeneous groups so that the strong students can work with the weak students. If there are personality conflicts, perhaps the teacher may intervene and choose certain groups. But sometimes the groups have formed on their own, and it works well. But it really depends on the group dynamic, what kind of relationships are going on, and what type of academic factors that are at play. But it really is going to depend a lot on class size, the level, again, the maturity level of the student, and the level of language that they are. And so, yeah, but it really does vary. But most of the time, there are some groups involved. And so when they do work in groups, the teacher, part of the assessment, and I haven't spoken much about this, but most of the time, in fact, when you use performance tests, you use rubrics, and you share those rubrics with the students at the very beginning of the unit, well before they start preparing for the performance test. So they know from the very beginning what the expectations are from the teacher. They know what they are to, how they're going to be assessed. And a lot of times you can even, again, depending on the maturity level of the students, you can even bring them in, and they can offer ways of designing the rubric themselves. We've had some classroom experiences where the students themselves have been part of the design of the rubric, and so they are really contributing to the way that they're going to be assessed later on. So, yeah, group work typically is part of the process, and teachers oftentimes will grade on the process. They'll also grade on how students work together. If all the students are doing what they're supposed to be doing. If some students are slackers, this will be reflected typically in a reflection at the end, where students will share a reflection on how the experience worked. And so there are opportunities for not only assessment from the teacher, but peer assessment and self-assessment. And you can even bring in external experts, quote-unquote experts, to bring in, and they can also be part of the evaluation process. There are just many different ways to do it, but a lot of it's going to depend on the comfort level of the teacher, the type of context, the school, if there are any policies that are supportive or not of those types of assessment. So there are a lot of different variables that one has to consider, but typically performance tests do involve group work. Okay, great. So performance tasks, we could probably have several sessions on performance tasks, and if that is something of interest, we can certainly talk more about that at a later time. We can bring in more examples. I've done a lot of different workshops on performance tests, but I haven't really prepared anything formally for today. But certainly we can discuss those, or discuss this a little bit more in detail later on, if that. Yes, go ahead, Priscilla.
Okay, Ben, in terms of the performance task, that sounds like something that I would be interested in. With my doctoral, it's going towards conversational English. It's a performance of comprehending a situation that might actually involve maybe not all six of the I forget what you call those things, but a good many of those. What I'm looking to see, it sounds like sounds like great sense to me, is the conversational skills comprehension. Can someone actually participate in a conversation and demonstrate an understanding of the scenario based upon something that's given? And what I believe is happening is that a lot of students are getting into classes, they're understanding the words, just knowing the words, but they don't have an understanding of what it is that they're doing in context. So in this particular case, the task performance, being able to demonstrate a performance, be it a brochure or even a skit, a verbal. I would be more interested in a verbal conversation than the brochure. But that sounds like something that I might be able to do something with, and I'd like to see whatever it is that you're doing with that end a little bit later. Okay, I'll mute.
Certainly, Priscilla, and I can be more than happy to give you some websites. I've done a lot of interviews with teachers at our university when I was a coordinator, where we would actually take video clips of performance tasks, and I would interview the teacher, and they would talk about the performance task, and we would see clips, and you might find that of some benefit. I really think this would be something that I think would, that you might want to consider, because I think that what we've seen, the performance tasks, as I mentioned, they build around these understandings. The idea of developing a tour package or a vacation package for a family, and all the factors that go behind that, you'll notice that there's really no language built in there. I mean, that same performance test theoretically could be applied to a level 1 class or an advanced level class, because there's no mention of language, there's no mention of specific grammar that's being used. It's more of this notion, or this idea, this understanding, more specifically, that the students need to achieve. So it's not just a matter of them learning the language, but it's also them gaining this understanding. And so you might be able to take the performance task or observe a performance task and look only at the speaking skill, but obviously they're incorporating all 4 skills. But you could see how they have, for example, if they've developed the brochure, it's not so much, you wouldn't be looking at the brochure, how they develop the brochure necessarily. You would be looking at how they use the brochure to communicate with a family that wants to take a trip. So I certainly think that there's some room there. I think that might help, might be of some use to you. And certainly contact me later, and I'll be more than happy to provide all the links to all the interviews that I've done on performance tasks. And certainly we can talk more about this either privately or in a public forum later on. Performance tasks for me are really the heart and soul of all English court classes, in the sense that if we don't develop performance tests, we're not doing enough for the students. This is typically where students do well on tests, but they leave the class and they can't conduct a conversation with someone outside of class. And so the performance tests, I feel, kind of close that gap and allow the students to use the language in a more authentic context. So, wonderful. All right, any other comments? Esther, would you like to maybe mention or share an experience with maybe something from your kids that you have worked with? Have you had some activities that have gone really well for your small kids that you work with? If you'd like to share some experience that you've had. Okay, I think your mic is muted. For some reason, I'm not able to hear you.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't unmute my mic. I was trying to say that for young children, it will be a lot harder because they don't have the responsibility of being an autonomous learner that I think it will be needed for a performance task approach, because since the English class is even though it's in a public school, it's not really in the curricula right now. It's in the pre-stages of being in the curricula. So we go at 7 a.m. before everybody else starts the regular classes. Young children come to in the 7 a.m. class to English class, so they don't have that much responsibility to really just say you need to make a brochure and then set them free. That's why I think the project based learners is good enough. You say you're going to make a brochure, but then you say this is the way we maybe are going to get there. And yes, we do use course books. These course books are recently edited this year. They just came out. They're hot potatoes. They just came out, and they have the full project-based learning, because in the first page of the unit they say we are going to write a story, and then they take the children through steps of finding out characters, setting, maybe timelines. By the end of the unit, that is usually a month, 4 or 5 weeks, they try to come up with a story. But it has the same time frame as the performance task. You give them a couple, 2-3 weeks to do a task, but it's more teacher with students, not allowing all the job to go to the students. But I think that at university students, it's a great way to make them autonomous and have full responsibility of their learning English. But one of my questions was, that if you allow students to use the mother tongue where they are preparing, this is one of the situations that I have here, that when they are working together, I cannot turn off the Spanish. They immediately go to Spanish to do the job and then present in English. But I'm still working on asking them to speak only English. Maybe next year I'm going to bring a stoplight, something that I'm going to make maybe out of paper, something that says stop only English, something like that for next year, to tell them that during this next 20 minutes you're not allowed to use Spanish, because next year they're going to be on 6th grade English. So I'm trying to work that. So my question is, Mr. Benjamin, if you allow your students to use the mother tongue while they're preparing their performance tasks. I'm going to mute my mic.
Great. Thank you, Esther, for sharing that. Yeah, definitely L1, L2 use in the classroom is a big topic, maybe. I wouldn't say debate necessarily, but certainly I think it seems that every teacher has their own perspective. Mine personally is that I think L1 or the mother tongue is okay in certain cases. And it depends a lot on the situation, but it can certainly be overused. But teaching university students, we had the same problem teaching university students. When they work together, they speak Spanish, and that it's probably not a lot different than what you're experiencing with your younger learners. But we have the same issues trying to force them to speak English when they work in groups, and every teacher, I think, has his or her own technique. At the university, they charge pesos, right? If you speak Spanish, you have to pay a charge. You're going to be charged a peso, and maybe at the end of the unit or the semester, they have some sort of party. I've never tried that technique. I typically just kind of bug them until they are speaking a little bit more in English. You have to find the right moments. I mean, there's some teachers that say that they don't want to speak any L1, that it's all, in this case, English, and that they never will speak Spanish in our case. But I do know that my personal belief is that there is L1 in the classroom. It can be helpful if used correctly, if used at certain points, certain times, and but yeah, I think it's kind of a very personal choice. I don't know if anyone else, how others feel about using the L1, the mother tongue, in class. If it should be used a lot, a little, or if it shouldn't be used at all. If teachers should only use the L2 in the classroom. So, what are your thoughts? Feel free to add some comments into the chat. Okay, go ahead, Priscilla.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that it would help to expedite the explanation. For some, it's just because I don't have to do that. But I would imagine that if I were teaching something other than English to Spanish-speaking students or any other student, I think it would help me if someone could speak the language of someone else, because my vocabulary would be a little bit different, and while I'm trying to find the picture or the exact words, it would be a lot faster for someone else to quickly explain what it is that I'm trying to say, then go back to English. I think it's okay. If L1 being the mother tongue, I think it's okay to use it sparingly, but yeah, I think it would help to expedite the process.
Yeah, and it certainly does. I mean, there's times where, you're you're trying to explain and you're trying to explain, and they don't get it, and they don't get it, and they don't get it, and at some point it does help to go to the L1. I think it's about finding that right balance, that right time, so not to jump to the L1 if they're getting a little bit, if they're a little bit confused. Sometimes. So I think everyone interprets that point differently. For me personally, I don't mind if my students they're not, they're unsure about how to express themselves, and I don't mind kind of trying to guide them through that, process of not knowing and trying for them to really discover what it is that they're trying to say. But certainly, you have to have a flow in the classroom, and if it gets too bogged down, and certainly the L1, I think, can be beneficial. When you talk about conditionals, and especially with teaching English to Spanish speakers, the conditional, a lot of times using the L1 can be very beneficial, so that they can compare the two different languages. And I think that helps shed light on understanding how to form the conditionals in English. But I think it just depends a lot on the age group, the level of the student, the particular grammatical structure, even the time frame, how many hours or minutes you have with the students a day. There's a lot of different variables. But certainly, for me personally, I think L1 certainly has a use. Okay. All right. Any other comments about L1? And just to throw this out, Esteban, you mentioned that that because you teach small groups, small younger kids, that maybe performance tasks wouldn't be suitable for them. Again, I want to let everyone know that this book that Wiggins and McTighe, where they discuss in detail about performance tests, they actually are addressing K through 12 students. And they're not even addressing specifically English language learners. They're looking at general ed, content courses, K through 12, and certainly the understandings that we would expect from university students or high school students aren't going to be the same understandings that we would expect from younger kids. But the idea is essentially the same, in that we're trying to create critical thinkers, even from a young age. And I think that's kind of the underlining message that they are trying to send through this idea of 6 facets of understanding. Because even kindergartners, my youngest son, Oliver, is 6 years old, and he can explain things, he can interpret, he can apply things, he has empathy, he can feel things, right? And to a certain degree, he has some self-knowledge. There's a reflective nature to him. And so I think the idea is just to find out really how far you can take the students with the understanding, certainly, that the level of understanding is going to be dependent on the age of the learner. So, great. Yeah, right. And Priscilla's bringing up some very great examples that they can relate to. Yeah, exactly. The birth of a kitten, what the significance is. What is the deep, the idea behind that? Sports, competitiveness, exactly. It's not about just winning or losing. It's how you play the game. Those types of understandings or notions that are really essential just for us as human beings, not necessarily just language learners or learning math or science. Right. So, okay, go ahead,
I know you're almost out of time, but I can even see Esther taking the project-based activities that are in your book. I think I could even see how some of those quite possibly could be turned around into tasks. It might be worth looking at. Don't go away from the curriculum, because I'm sure they purchased the curriculum for a reason. but it may be worth looking at.
Yeah, and I ask about the course book, Esther, because even, we have course books and we have a curriculum as well, but our course book does not talk about performance tests. They are far from providing activities or examples of performance tests. So we actually design performance tests around the content in the book, and basically came up and designed performance tasks that were based on the content that was covered in the book. So we kind of worked backwards on that. So I think that this is worth discussing more, and maybe we can talk a little bit more during our next session. Certainly, I'd love to talk more about it if that is of interest, and we can address these types of performance tests, what they look like, maybe see some examples of what they look like, and maybe see how they might be applied to other groups. In this case, maybe it's theirs group, how one might be adaptable to younger kids, younger learners, and learners who are learning English that's not necessarily in the curriculum. All right, great. Well, I think we're about out of time. And I would like to thank everyone for a great conversation, great dialogue. I'd like to share a few links here as we conclude. And again, all of these links are accessible or will be available in the recording that you can access later on through WizIQ. And I will also be uploading this to YouTube, and I'll provide a link later on as well. And one of the links here is a Deagle, and Deagle a link or a group which I created, and these are topics that I'll be throwing up or adding into this group, and you're welcome to create or add different links that you want to discuss for these sessions. I actually created the session CU is for Collaborative Understandings, which is the name of my site, but I'm using this group for specifically for TESOL Talk. So it would be different sites that you find online that you want to discuss in these different sessions. So this is basically what I'll be using as we prepare for these talks. And again, there's not a lot of preparation, as you can see. The idea here is to give all of you an opportunity to share, and I would much rather hear from you and have you really direct the discourse instead of me coming in and lecturing or having all of the information prepared. I would much rather have your input. So again, feel free to add your thoughts either before or after these sessions in WizIQ by adding comments there. You can also add comments to my website. That's again, the link is provided here under CU Sessions. There's a way to add comments. And obviously you can contact me directly if you would like to send something privately. So this will conclude this session. Again, thank you very much for your participation. Thanks to all of those of you who have viewed the recording. And again, feel free to leave comments and suggestions. And we'll go ahead and conclude. Thanks again. Have a great night, everyone, a great morning, depending on where you are around the world. And bye for now.